So on Friday, the fourth episode of WandaVision debuted. And this is the episode that a lot of people have felt that if you haven't, checked out the previous three episodes, that this is the one that you would jump on with because this one, in a unique kind of, perspective, catches you up on everything. And the way that it does it is basically it gives you the viewing perspective from the Agents of S.W.O.R.D., which is a division within S.H.I.E.L.D. S.W.O.R.D. basically is the ones that, like S.H.I.E.L.D., S.H.I.E.L.D. takes care of the stuff, on the ground, on Earth, kind of deal. S.W.O.R.D. is basically the division of S.H.I.E.L.D. that takes care of stuff from an intergalactic cosmic perspective. And the reason they're, involved here is mainly because of what's going on, with Westview, of what's going on out, in that vicinity, if you will. So exactly why is episode 4 the one that, you could jump on with, in the first place? Well, because like I said, it catches you up on all the other three episodes. But it does it in a way that, like I said, you see it from the perspective of S.W.O.R.D. You see it from the perspective of, okay, basically you see it from the perspective of, what's going on, why is this happening, how did this occur, stuff like that. And one of the interesting scenes in this episode is Agent Woo, who is indeed the one that in episode 2 is calling out to Wanda and asking who is doing this to her. Agent Woo, gets on a whiteboard and writes down all the questions that obviously Kevin Feige and Marvel knew we were going to be asking when it came to the series. Like, why sitcoms? How is Vision alive? Who's really doing this? Stuff like that. Basically all the questions that would begin with how, why, what, and who. Those are basically what he's asking, those kind of questions. And long story short, we find out, like a lot of us pretty much suspected, that all of this is Wanda. I mean, last week, I super chatted John Campea and his wife Anne when they did the episode 3 open spoilers discussion for WandaVision. And I basically pointed out that in the first super chat of 2 that I gave, that Wanda is 75% in control, and that anything that doesn't, suit what she wants or tries to disrupt what she's doing, she either alters by resetting things, rewinding time, if you will, or she ends up casting them out, as we see what she did with Monica Rambeau. She cast her out, and here in episode 4 we see exactly how that's done, because you're wondering, okay, at the end of episode 3. We see her be, cast out of the portal or out of the bubble in which the town is encased, but we don't see how it's done. Well, here in episode 4, we see exactly how it's done. Wanda just blasts her right through a couple of walls, if you will, or TV set, pieces, whatever you want to call them, till she is basically blown outside of the bubble. And we find out from her own mouth that it's all Wanda. Now, here's what's interesting about, Monica getting blasted. Basically, a lot of people have suspected that she's going to gain her photon powers, because that's the name she's going to go under, probably in honor of her mom, who we find out died during the 5 years she was gone, because Monica was one of the people that was, snapped out of existence. She was blimped out of existence, if you will. So yeah, she finds out her mom's dead, and one of the speculations is that before the season for WandaVision is over, she's going to become Photon, and the way this is going to happen is that Wanda, by blasting her out of this reality with her powers, basically accidentally gave Monica her photon powers, where she can be invisible, she can turn into other people, maybe other things, stuff like that. To kind of go undetected and try to check out what's going on, stuff like that. Very cosmic, Captain Marvel-ish like powers, if you will. Now, again, not only does, Monica Rambeau herself at the end of this episode because basically it ends with her, being blasted out of the portal. Like I said, now we see how how that happened, and once she lands on the ground, everybody goes to her side, and the last thing she says is, "It's all Wanda. It's all Wanda." Before the episode ends. But what's also interesting about before the episode ends is when Vision arrives. When Wanda turns around, she doesn't see the Vision we saw in episode 3. No, instead, she sees the corpse of the dead Vision that we saw in Infinity War after Thanos ripped the Mind Stone out of his head, to add to his collection. So that's the one we see. And all Wanda has to do is just, she turns her head down and everything, but then kind of like uses her powers again to kind of snap things into what she wants, and then we once again see the Vision that we're used to seeing. But here's what's interesting. Just like in episode 3, Vision himself is starting to question what's going on. Like what's going on? Why can't we go outside, Westview any further? Like what's on the outside of Westview that you won't want us to see, or that nobody wants us to see? And what's interesting about Vision, though, is a lot of people are asking whether or not this is, Wanda, dealing in necrophilia, if you will, by reanimating the dead android body of Vision, or is this just a manifestation in her mind, and that when she loses focus and thus kind of loses the grip on the reality she's created, she starts seeing things as they actually are. Like, instead of seeing a manifestation of the Vision she wants, she sees the manifestation of Vision as we last saw him in Infinity War. So yeah, basically, long story short, what everybody suspected is pretty much on the button, that Wanda is the one behind all this. And I told John Campea and his wife Ann last week in the episode 3, open spoiler discussion, that not only is she 75% in control, with the abilities to reset things to her liking if she feels things are disrupting them, as well as cast, folks out if she feels they're disrupting things or they're a threat. But I also pointed out that, we have to remember that her powers are evolving. And to point this out, I reminded, John and Ann of, what happened in Endgame when Wanda nearly took out Thanos on her own. I mean, I even talked about this myself in a video. I said, basically when, Thanos was trying to fight Wanda, he was trying to attack her with a sword and she was blocking it. All she did was basically give him this all she did was kind of turn her head with a look of, seriously, you think that's going to work? And she breaks his sword. And she's about to tear him anew until, he orders his ships to fire down, rain upon everything to get her to stop. So yeah, basically, I pointed that out. And in addition, I said, who's to say she can't alter reality to her liking, or something like that. And even John agreed. He said, absolutely. And he brought it up even more so during the open spoiler discussion for this episode, that, you got to go back to the fight with Thanos, and how she nearly took him out. The thing is, Wanda's powers are evolving. And even last week, John and Ann, even John and Ann kind of agreed on this, that, what happened at Endgame is this the MCU's way of saying this is the full extent of her powers, or we're just or what we saw in Endgame is just like scratching the surface? And Ann basically agreed that, yeah, they're scratching at something, and this is going to result in Wanda becoming the big bad or something like that going forward. And that might be true. That might be true, but it's kind of those situations where you'll have to wait and see, because if there's anything about the MCU and Kevin Feige we can agree on, it's the fact that basically, long story short, they will always try to swerve you. They will try to swerve you with different ideas or different, situations and stuff like that. They will try to, swerve you, try to throw you off a little bit, make you think one thing, make you think and believe one thing, and then they end up doing something else. But right now, it definitely looks like Monica this time around, because I said 75% last week. I'm increasing that up to 15% because I truly believe she is 90% in control, but the other 10%, that's kind of up in the air. And a lot of people would assume that other 10% has to be Agnes. Because a lot of people have pointed out that they believe, because of all the clues and hints thrown out there, like, her talking about her husband Ralph and how he looks good in the dark and da-da-da-da-da. It makes them believe that she is the witch Agatha from the comics, the one that kind of served a bit as the mentor of Wanda, taught her how to fully, utilize her powers, and also kind of point out that she has an association with Mephisto, basically because she kind of sold her soul or made an allegiance or made a deal with him, to do his bidding in exchange for something else. Now, if there's anything about the MCU I think a lot of us can agree with, is that sometimes when a character comes into play finally, they're not always portrayed as you read them in the comics or in the original adaptation. They can be changed up. They can be, they could become this, they could become that. A good example, I'll let you know, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but a good example, in my opinion, is the live-action G.I. Joe movies. Now, as far as I know, in one of them, if not both, the Baroness turns good. Now, it was always hinted at, so, excuse me, I had to walk past my chair there, but it was always hinted at, even in the original G1 G.I. Joe cartoon, that Baroness eventually would turn good. And, even in the Dick Entertainment continuation of G1 after the movie, it was implied that she might turn good too. And even with Renegades and Sigma 6 and all that, it was always implied that this something like that could happen. It was always hinted at, but never followed through. As far as I know, in the movies, as far as I know in the live action films, it looks like they may have followed through on that. Again, I have to go rewatch them and everything. But basically, it sounds like they may have done that. Heck, they did an alternate universe episode in G1 where Baroness is good. So again, they've always implied and hinted that may occur, but we just never got to that point until I think the live action films. But again, I bring this up because, even though Agatha, I guess is kind of an in-betweener or something like that, someone that's good but has bad intentions, or it's sort of like, in the middle, if you will. Who's to say she's not going to be portrayed as good or in the middle or whatever the case may be here in the MCU? We don't know how they're going to portray her if Agnes in the series is indeed Agatha. Because there is one moment, I don't know if it's in the next episode or in a future episode, maybe 2 weeks from now, a week from this Friday, whether it's episode 6 or 7, but Vision touches Agatha's head. By touching her head, I guess it kind of restores some kind of memory. Because when she looks at Vision, she's like, am I dead? She asks the question of whether she's dead. And when he says no, why? Her answer to him is, because you are. So you have to wonder if this is Agatha. It definitely presents another question. If she's a powerful witch that takes Wanda under her wing, if you will, to teach her how to utilize her powers, then does this mean this version of Wanda is a lot more powerful than this version of Agnes, to the point that she can even take a powerful sorceress, a witch, if you will, in Agnes, and erase that part of Vision from her and everybody else's memory of him dying and all that. So it makes you really wonder. But yeah, this episode really, again, is one of those jumping on points that even if you haven't watched the series, from the beginning to currently, you don't have to worry about doing that because this kind of catches you up from an interesting perspective, from a unique perspective in the long run. So overall, this series is definitely living up to the hype it was given. And I think going forward, just like everybody else has pointed out, I think we're going to get a balancing of part of the episode's going to take place in the sitcom reality, but in turn, it's also going to be taking part in the reality. In other words, what we'll be seeing, suddenly the next scene will transition to the, in the sitcom reality, what we'll be seeing there, suddenly we'll transition to the reality that's on the outside checking in to see what's going on. And the sneak peeks for the rest of the season and, season 5 really, I think, are going to tell a lot going forward. And there's even a part in the sneak peek where, she's like, I don't know if it's Agatha or it's Wanda or something like that. But basically she's like, I don't know how this is happening or something like that. I don't know if that's her, if that's Agatha or Agnes, I should say. I don't know. But there's also a scene where she gets sucked into something and she wakes up. I don't know if she wakes up as her younger self or what's going on, because it looks like the face that we see at the end of one of the episode 5 promos is a younger Wanda face. So I don't know if she's going, in her mind, she's going back in time. I don't know what's going on, what's happening, but it's going to be interesting going forward. And a lot of people have said that, Vision's going to be the one that has to stop Wanda. Even if, Vision is a reanimated corpse, brought to life by Wanda through necrophilia, or, he's just a manifestation that's been given his own independence, his own life. Everybody is assuming he's going to be the one that has to stop her and make her realize, look, you have to move on. I died, you have to move on. You can't just, you can't. Basically, what I think it's going to lead to is either Vision, Agnes as Agatha, or somebody coming forward and saying, look, I know what it's like to lose people, but you can't do things like this is to hide your grief. What you have to do is have a long, good cry. That's what's going to happen. Someone, in a sense, is going to tell her, you just got to let it all out. Let all your hurt feelings, all your emotions, just let it all out. Let that sadness come out. Cry. No matter how long you have to do it, just do it. And you'll feel better in the end. And I think that's what it's going to lead to. But when that happens, though, that's what's going to trigger the multiverse situation that we're going to get in Spider-Man 3 and in Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange 2. So that's what I think we're heading towards. Now, again, could they throw us a curveball, before the series is over? Absolutely. But we don't know. The way they're always positioning all these pieces for upcoming episodes and everything, it's like, yeah, they're not letting us in on everything, but they're giving us enough hints and clues that, something's up. That, basically a lot of things are pointing towards Wanda, but there is a bit, like I said, just a little bit that's pointing in another direction. Like somebody is, influencing her, to do this. Now, if it is Agatha, now here's the thing, and I was thinking about this the other day. If this is Agnes, and let's say Agnes is one of the people that has to help stop Wanda or bring her back to reality, you have to wonder if Agnes is the one that's going to suggest, let it all out. Just let your emotions out. Let your grief come out. Stop trying to hide it. Just, accept what's happened. Let it all out. Have a good... You got to wonder if Agnes is going to be the one that says, just let it all out. Let the grief, let the sadness, let the crying come out, and you'll feel better in the end. You have to wonder if she'll be the one that does that. Because if Agnes, as some people are suspecting, could have some kind of influence, you have to wonder if the reason she's having an influence is because she wants to kind of teach Wanda a lesson. And that lesson is you can't, you can't hide your grief. You have to accept it. And sometimes it's hard to do, but you have to do it. So I think that's what we're going to be ultimately heading towards, in lessons, if you will, when it comes to this series, that Wanda, this series is going to be the first step to her learning to deal with her grief, deal with the loss that she has had and try to move on. That's what I think we're going to be heading towards as far as like, what lessons could be learned from this. But overall, though, this episode really, I think, set the stage for what's to come. And the reason, if anybody's wondering why they brought in so much in just, a half hour or just 22 minutes, in this episode, is because this is the halfway point. This is only a 9-episode miniseries. So doing this, right now, it basically is like, okay, we gave you the appetizers and everything. We gave you the appetizers. Now we're going to give you the main course. Now with this episode, we're giving you the main course. We're giving you everything. And I think that's what we're going to get. So overall, this episode really, I think, not only answered a lot of questions so far that we've been wondering, but it's definitely setting that foundation of saying playtime is over. It's time to get serious. So, but anyway, though, guys, that's my thoughts on episode 4 of WandaVision. Let me know what yours are down below. Comment if you like. And I will talk to y'all later. God bless. Take care. I am out. Stay safe.